Welcome to Golden Mastermind Seminars Radio with your host, Jeffrey Combs.
Good afternoon, Jeffery Combs, President and Founder, Golden Mastermind Seminars Incorporated. Beautiful Tuesday afternoon. It is not the next to last Tuesday, March 2021. Welcome to Facebook Live. The former More Heart Than Talent Mindset call that used to be 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, that is now the GMS Facebook Live, Golden Mastermind Seminars Incorporated, live with Jeffery Combs, your host this afternoon. Caroline, how are you this morning or this afternoon? Welcome. And I believe I see Tracy. How are you this afternoon, Tracy? Good to see you. I believe I also saw, hi Patty, welcome to Facebook Live this afternoon. Erica, Scott Lucas, how are you? Good to connect with you, Scott. It was an honor sharing Clubhouse with you. Welcome. Tracy, how are you in Savannah, Georgia? Joe, Casper, good to see you this afternoon. The topic for today's Facebook Live is being a closer, being a finisher. Patty Roberts, good to see you this afternoon. Heather, how are you this afternoon? Good to connect with you, Heather. And I saw your comment on the hair. It's a little wild today, Heather. I don't know what that is, but it is... Maybe it's the collagen. Is it possible that collagen grows hair? Well, I had a couple doses today. So good afternoon, everyone. Kira, good to see you. Carol, good to see you. Enjoying the warm weather in New Jersey. And Tracy and Heather say hello to each other. Jose Andres, welcome. Jose lives right down the highway from me in Manteca, California. Jose is an exceptional real estate investor and multiple business owner, as he also owns a construction company. And Jose lives 15 miles away from me and is my coaching client. It is the collagen, Heather says. So collagen is now growing hair. So thank you. I noticed, Heather, it is a little wild today. So thank you, everyone. Yes, it does grow hair. Joe Casper, for those of you who do not know Joe Casper, Joe, let them know who you are. I mean, are you talking about me? Joe Casper has been my client since 2002. He saw me speak in Dave Silverman's on today's Facebook Live. Joe Casper and I met Joe Casper and David Silverman in Rochester, New York in 2002, back in the day. They both are my coaching clients, and they're on Facebook Live here today. Joe Casper is a health and nutrition expert. He developed his own vitamin line. It's not a network marketing business. I also see Kevin Woods, my other homeboy from Sacramento, California. So good to see some great people. Doctor of Nutrition. So Joe, Joe, do you have a doctorate degree? If you do, professional vitamin formulator. Okay, so I've known Joe a long time. He used to have a product called Fire Your Diet, and I assist my publishing company once upon a time published his book, Fire Your Diet, and I've shared the stage with him on many times. Mr. Matt Smith in history. So Joe DiBianca holds that title. So let's move into the inspiration for today's Facebook Live, as I see I'm experiencing some technical difficulties on Verizon's end. So I'll do the best I can here. Being a closer, being a finisher, it means when you wake up in the morning, theoretically, you make your bed, you exercise, you have a routine, you have a system, you finish what you do. So in selling would be a closer is someone who's very skilled at the communication style of selling. And they're able to, on a high frequency of communication, be able to create transactions. So a closer is someone who's skilled at persuasion, being able to write content, being able to brand, being able to communicate, qualify people for their time, being able to present products, services, benefits, and features, and then being able to ask for the commitment. That's what closing would be in the business world. It means you bring the two together, and then there's a transaction, there's a product, a benefit, a feature, and a service. But closing is also an identity. In baseball, Bruce Sutter walks in from the outfield. Mariano Rivera walks in the outfield. In my day, Al Hrabosky walks in from the outfield, takes the ball, and closes out the 8th or the 9th inning. Now, later in baseball, they have a setup man, but the term closer has a lot of significance in baseball, because a closer is the person who finishes the game. I once watched the great Satchel Paige strike out the side on 9 pitches in his barnstorming era in his 60s, and he did this with no infielders, no outfielders. He had that much confidence in himself. So closing really means, in context to today's context, Closing means finishing. Amanda, good to see you this afternoon. Jody Garrett is on today's Facebook Live. Jody Garrett played Major League Baseball for 6 years. Jody is also a closer in the selling world. Last time I spoke to Jody, he was a closer in the mortgage industry. Jody, at one point, held the record for most hits in the history of University of Stanford. Jody was also co-rookie of the year for the Cleveland Indians, hitting 22 home runs. So Jody, I'm covering what a closer is in baseball. Mariano Rivera had the highest closing ratio of any pitcher in Major League history. Now, this is a sport that goes back pre-turn of the century. And so a closing ratio, and there's a top tier high school coach, Cassiopeia Turcotte, is on today's Facebook Live. And a closer would also be the person you put the basketball in their hands. Heather Vaughan is on today's Facebook Live. She was a top tier high school, college volleyball player, and Division I and Division II college volleyball coach. So your closer would be that person who you put the ball in their hands at the end of the game. Tom Brady, Joe Montana, to name a few. Roger Staubach, Terry Bradshaw would be a few of those people. These are your go-to guys. These are the closers. These are the people you hand the ball to. This would be Tiger Woods on a putt or on a drive, or whoever who is like mastery of the game. Now, I consider myself a great closer, and a great closer because of the repetition and the experience and doing it over and over and over. I first started experiencing closing, selling Time Life books when I was 19 years old on 6th in Washington Street, downtown Denver, Colorado, selling Time Life books. I went on to get a degree in radio and television, specializing in radio and television sales. And then I also had commissioned sales jobs. And the job that gave me the most insight, wisdom, was selling Yellow Page advertising. I would close 13 to 15 sales a day for a 3-year period, straight commission, Southwestern Bell. I was the West Coast territory rep. I would go into towns and I would be there for 90 days and I would close out a directory. So closing becomes an identity. Closing is finishing. So closing is you put your hand in the baseball glove, you're on the pitcher's mound or the softball mound, and you're looking down at the catcher. You're not looking at the hitter, you're looking at the catcher. Casey Betty, who is oftentimes on Facebook Live, she's on the late night ones more frequently. Casey is a mother of 3. She threw 21 no-hit games. So when that is the situation, then you are the closer. So Andre Denny says, the crusher. Good afternoon, Jeff. Thank you very much, Andre. So crushing it is also referencing closing. So once again, closing is finishing. So the way you communicate is this: instead of saying I'm always late, you start telling yourself I always finish. Instead of saying I'm always behind, tell yourself I always finish. Start to put finish and closing together so it becomes projects, it becomes your garage, it becomes your bed, it becomes your sink, it becomes your business, it becomes selling. You close sales for teammates. The value of a 3-way call. If you ever did a 3-way call with me, I had a system and a style that I taught my team, and I also have taught many salespeople that I'm a 1-call closer, a 2-call closer, and occasionally a 3-call closer. And in all selling experience, every selling experience has its own sequence. So there are certain sales that require longer than others. I like to close in 1 or 2 calls if possible, and I'm also able to walk away from business easily and effortlessly and let people go. The fortune is the follow-up it's too black and white of a term, which I don't believe that is the case. The fortune's not in the follow-up. That's a cliche, but the fortune is in being able to be skilled at closing sales, teaching closing skills, teaching it to a culture, fostering a culture of closing where closing becomes an identity. And that there's also, closing is not forced, it's not direct, it's not in your face, you don't fuck with people, that's not what it means at all. The fortune is in the close. Thank you, Amanda. Amanda is a closer. Amanda is good. I'm most effective as a 1-call closer. I mean, I coached Amanda for several years on this. Simply close in 1 call. Kira, so now, once again, different business models have different closing sequences. I've coached people who sell logistics. They believe that it takes longer, a year, and there's certain situations. But once again, there are certain people that are ready to buy when you encounter them. And there are certain people you meet, and it can be love at first sight, and you meet someone and you marry them. I mean, you're closed. You're both closed. You can also make a colossal mistake in certain situations and bring on the wrong people, not really understand. So once again, it's not a black and white situation because closing is a skill. There's flexibility in closing. There's dexterity in closing. And it's your responsibility to relax. How to sell to CEOs. Thanks. Well, you sell to CEOs the same way you would sell to someone that you meet on a doorstep. I mean, you knock on someone's door because closing is closing. So you would close a CEO by presenting the best value, reading the situation for what it is, seeing if the person is in a position to purchase, trial closing throughout the conversation, then asking for the commitment. And that's a key skill. On Saturday, I called a man who I found his phone through the white pages I invested $10 in a Google search, found the man's name. I factored that this is the right man I was looking for. I deducted 2 and 2 together, and I reached him. The man that I was speaking to is a billionaire. He's the number one sports collector in the world. He has the largest sports collection. He has the largest inventory of any cardboard, memorabilia, or autograph collector in the world. Lives in a small city in the Midwest, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. He answered on 2 rings, and within a few minutes, I presented my unique marketing value. I wanted to sell my Heisman Trophy collection. There are 85 pieces in the collection. It's worth multiple 6 figures. And I asked him if he was open. He said, "What do you have?" I presented it. He said, "Let me think about it." And he said, if I don't buy it, I may have 2 or 3 other buyers. I set an appointment to get back with him. He was not closable on the first call. I understood that. But I also he spoke to me for an hour about the industry. So once again, that he wasn't closable, but just the fact that I even found him was a close. I mean, the law of averages are high because I understand how to do it, but he answered on the first time I called him, went to his voicemail he had no voicemail. Second time I called him, he picked up. I let him know who I was, purpose of my call, and then engaged in the conversation. And once again, this man is a billionaire. I've never spoken to him before, and he wasn't closable. But I did establish a relationship with him, and I will be communicating with him more. And he also owns a direct sales company, a network marketing company. So once again, a lot of situations happened in that call. There was no transaction, but there was a great value proposition, experience, and a future connection. So once again, these are what win-win conversations all. And closers understand you don't close them all. And closing ratio, I mean, what is a closing? A closing ratio, as I factor that my closing ratio is around 1 out of 5 or something in that category for qualified leads that I attract. I've also been in a position where I would call 200 leads in a day. So, I mean, and that was smiling and dialing. That was like dialing. Yesterday, I spoke to the owner of the company where I became a 7-figure income earner in 1996, 1997, and 1998. His name was Dave. He was one of the 3 owners of a company that I was a 7-figure income earner. He contacted me. He's in the network marketing industry today, and he asked me for some closing skills. So once again, this is a guy that I admired back in the day. So closing is a science. Closing is a skill set. But closing requires several components to it. First of all, if you are in your head and you're overwhelmed, then hire me to be your coach. Because if you process, think, and analyze, then you won't have the dexterity or the speed to be able to close. I can assist you to let go of the events that shape the feelings. To be an effective closer, you have to have very good reflexes. It means you have to be able to adapt to the conversation like this. He says this, I say that. He says this, I say this. He says this, she says that, I say this. But you can't do this if you're thinking. And if you're a perfectionist, I'm a perfectionist, but not in closing. Because in closing, I'm not focused on perfection. I'm focused on a result. I'm focused on either letting the prospect go because they don't qualify for what I'm doing, selling, marketing, branding, or they're not going to be closable. So, and that's a key skill, is to be able to read the situation for what it is without personalizing it, making yourself wrong, making the prospect wrong, feeling rejected, feeling abandoned, being critical about mistakes. I mean, you learn to let the situation go for what it is. And so you require emotional reflexes, the dexterity to be able to close. Now, if you've been traumatized, sexually abused, if you live in your head, if you live in anxiety, fear, and doubt, this can create a problem in closing because of the fight or flight you're in, the overwhelm, the story you tell yourself. That can all be rectified. If I was your coach, I will greatly assist you to let go of this. And closing is listening. You want to be able to hear what's meant, not what's said. Now, Kevin Woods is on the call today. Kevin is a top-tier closer in the mortgage industry. I coach him. Joe DiBianca became one of the best closers I ever coached. Jennifer Corliss-Trinkner became a great closer. I have taught thousands and thousands and thousands of people closing skills. Alan Noble, who was one of the #1 income earners in a direct sales company called ASEA, he was in my team when he was 24 years old. I taught him how to close. I mean, I have taught thousands and thousands of people how to close. And one of the world's greatest closers bought products from me last Friday, Dan Locke. Dan Locke, who has a program called High Ticket Closing, he bought some downloads from me, and this dude is the master closer. Dan Locke sells $20,000 coaching programs. He has a program called High Ticket Closer. He bought some of my content last Friday. I called him up, answered the phone, had a great conversation with him. I'm going to bring him on one of my Facebook Lives. Dan Locke, High Ticket Closer. He bought content from me. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. And so Iman says I was coaching him. Yes, he brought downloads from me Thursday and Friday, and then I saw his phone number, called him up, and he answered. That's the way it's supposed to be. And he bought some more downloads from me. So, I mean, once again, this is how you close. You close by asking questions. You find out if there's an opening. And in that space, I know Iman says he visited him in Vancouver. Yes, Yvonne, tell him who he is. I mean, he is High Ticket Closer. He has thousands of people attend his events for $20,000. He bought some downloads from me. I mean, once again, all of you could do this. In 1990, I was just getting started full-time in a company called Herbalife. This is where I learned my network marketing skill, technique, and style, was in Herbalife. I saw the great Jim Rohn speak a few times. And Jim Rohn never talked that much about selling. Jim Rohn just delivered great philosophy, the kind of philosophy that you just hung on. It was like a piece of fruit in a tree, and you could just see it just dangling there. You're like, oh my God, this is Jim Rohn. And he's talking about, he's there's pennies in your pocket, zero in your bank account, creditors calling. It's time to change your philosophy. I mean, that was Jim Rohn. I used to see him in Herbalife back in the day. I got to meet Mark Hughes back in the day, the owner of Herbalife. I mean, that's where I learned some of my closing skills. And I was doing presentations at 1 o'clock and 7 o'clock, 4 days a week, on Friday, 1 o'clock, on Saturday at 10 o'clock with the training at noon. I did this 6 days a week for 3 years in that time frame in 4 different cities, building teams, building organizations, standing in front of a room, in front of a whiteboard, presenting, closing a room, closing small circles. I mean, learning how to close a room. I mean, I learned how to close from your table. I mean, I have been closing since I've been closing, and you can do the same situation, but closing is identity. It's an attitude. It's a style. It's a personality, and it's very unique to you because you develop your own closing technique and styles. But if you have anxiety about closing, if you're afraid of closing, if you don't deserve it, if you're uncomfortable with receiving, this is going to really hinder your ability to ask for commitments. But when you get in your head in closing, it's all over because the prospect owns you. And when you stumble through your words, and what happens a lot of times is in closing, many people have this. It's called a gap and a delay. When you have a gap and a delay in your communication style based on trauma from events that are unresolved, you will not be able to close because you'll go, I guess, I think, kinda. When you have that communication style, closing requires a speed and it's a flow. But if you're in this overwhelmed state, you can't master these emotions. You'll be so in your head, you'll actually fail before you start to justify being disappointed. I'll say it one more time. If you're addicted to disappointment, in your closing experiences, typically what will happen is you will make mistakes, you will trip over your words, you'll get overwhelmed, you'll blow the situation, you'll tell yourself a story, you'll criticize yourself, and then you'll procrastinate. And then you'll just get ready to get ready. I learned a great lesson. I had a closing clinic once where it was $2,000 for 15 people. I bought all these leads. I put out thousands of postcards, and I recorded the whole situation. And it's on a recording. It's called Prospecting from the Heart. And what I found is hardly anyone would prospect at this 2-day clinic. They wanted me to do it, so I did. I closed sales live and recorded it from all these postcards I had and set up appointments for people and gave them all the leads. And then on Saturday, I was closing the sales for them in their different individual companies. But even at this closing clinic, people had so much reluctance. I'm not here to, I didn't know I was going to have to pick the phone up. I was here to watch you. I go, no, Chief, this is about you, my man. This is about you, my woman. This is about you learning how to do what I do. And people were just like, I mean, I saw one person actually, I'm going to the bathroom. They went to they never came back. They fucking left the event because they had created such a story out of having to prospect at an event. I never saw them again. They got so overwhelmed at the prospect of closing in front of other people. John Ramsey, one of my longest term clients. John has been following me since 1999. John, great to see you. John and his company has closed over 20 sales this month. Heather Vaughan, who is on today's Facebook Live, I know that Heather told me, now I know she did this. She closed over 50 sales in 6 weeks. I mean, once again, that doesn't mean that you're a millionaire, but it means you're well on your way. It means if you can learn that component, I mean, that puts you in alignment where not only can you close sales, but then if you learn how to teach closing, then when you learn how to do a three-way call. Now, let me cover a three-way call for you on closing. Now, this is primarily from network marketing and direct sales. I've done thousands, and I mean thousands of closes. But I also didn't want my team to be dependent on me closing their sales, because then I have a team that's codependent and I seek independence. So I taught people how to close, and I had a team of closers. I mean, so that I built a culture of closing. And if you coach with me, I'll assist you to become a more effective closer. And so John Ramsey, I'm watching him close. He's also in the right place at the right time. And that's a big component. I mean, you can be the right person in the wrong place, and everything can suck and you can't overcome it. But if you're able to really step into your power, and you're in a place like I was in 1996, I was in a company at the right place at the right time. And that company was just getting started. It just started momentum. And I went from $100,000 in credit card debt to $500,000 in 1 year to $1 million in the next year, because I was in the right place at the right time. Jennifer Spar, good to see you this afternoon. I also saw Jennifer Myers on today's Facebook Live. So that it's important to be in the right place at the right time. So when I would do a three-way call, I would want my teammate to edify me, introduce the prospect to me, then I'm going to edify my teammate so that there's respect established there. And I had a whole style I did. It was very simple. This would take about a minute. Then the prospect, I would not talk to a prospect unless they'd been through a presentation. And the same when I've been a sales manager of the situation. I'm not going in to a project or a prospect cold. I'm there to close the sale. I'm not there to pitch the deal. And if someone would bring me some broke prospect who is skeptical, I'm not talking to them, because that's not what a three-way call is for. A three-way call is to close the sale, and then your teammate sees how you do it, and you do it in a few minutes, not an hour, not explaining the pay plan, not seducing, convincing, and doing a lot of talking. I mean, a three-way call is to close the fucking sale. I mean, it's that simple. It's that simple. I'm there to close the sale, not qualify the buyer. The buyer is qualified, and the buyer wants to talk to an expert. That's the whole perception reality of a three-way call. So what you're doing is you're building credibility, there's edification, and you bring the closer on to close the transaction. I mean, that's what the closer is for. And so if you remember Pulp Fiction, when Harvey Keitel comes out, he's the closer. He's the cleanup man. He comes out and cleans up the mess that Samuel L. Jackson and you saw the John who was in that movie. You saw it. So once again, this is what it was. Travolta. So that he cleaned up the mess. He was the cleanup man. He was the closer. So Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson. Remember that part in the movie. Harvey Keitel comes out in the NXS car, the Datsun, and cleans the mess up. And that's what a closer is. He cleans it up. And so that's what you do. So I would do the three-way call. I would then ask the prospect, have they seen the presentation? Based on what they saw, how do they feel? Are there any questions I can answer for you? And with a very short period of time, I go, Tom, based on what you reviewed, are you in a position to purchase the product? Are you ready to get started? Are you ready to join our team, ready to join our culture? Are you in a position to commit? I mean, it's not the words, it's the posture. And in 1996 and 7, I really introduced that term posture to a culture, and then that term got around the industry, and then Other speakers and trainers started using that a lot. And posture is it's not how you stand, it's the way you position yourself. So, and posture means that you're clear, you understand, and you're able to transmute energy. That what I have is a product of value and service that will give you a great benefit. Are you in a position to receive it? This is the unspoken message that is getting transmuted. We have a great team. We would be honored if you would join. We're not here to beg you, but if you'd like to join, you're welcome. And if not, we'll let you go easily and effortlessly, and we won't be chasing you, begging you, or following up with you. This is all the unspoken message that goes on in posture. And when you understand that closing is a very diplomatic process, it's not being direct with the prospect, it's clarity. It's being clear with the prospect. Here's the value, here's the proposition, here's the product, here's the service, here's the benefit, here's the dream we're selling. Are you in a position to receive it? And when you're able to convey that, and the prospect goes, well, not to sound presumptuous. I had someone recently say to me, I mean, you've heard this. I've heard this so many. I'm going to hire you, but no, chief. When you said but, that was all over. That's the seduction. I am not seducible. By the way, closers are not seducible because they've heard lies so many times. I mean, they've heard excuses, objections, well-planned lies. In December, I'm going to hire you. I recently had a woman said to me, you're probably not going to believe this. Oh, you have no idea who you're talking to. I do believe it. I'm going to hire you, but I don't have my credit card with me. Okay, cool. When will you have your credit card? I'll be home in the next millennium. Actually, she said that night. I said, would it be possible for you to get back with me? So she did get back with me, and she lost her credit card. Now, imagine that. So I said, how long do you factor it will take you to find it? She said, well, I may have lost it and I could get another one. Now we have objection number 2. How long will it take you to get another one? 7 to 10 days. I said, which one? 7 or 10 days? She goes, to be safe. Safe. She goes, to be safe. I mean, you understand this. So this is a story. I said, hey, I completely understand. When it's good for you, get back with me. Now, do you factor that person ever got back with me? The answer would be no. And do you think I should follow up with her? No. She's not going to buy because I follow up with her. She's going to buy because she's comfortable. And whatever her story was her story. It's not my responsibility to understand her story. I didn't get into my head and go, this doesn't make sense. I don't understand this. What did I do wrong? Did I blow the deal? Should I call my sponsor? Should I call my upline? No, chief, just fucking let it go. I mean, that's what it is. It's one lead in the banquet of life. That's what it's called. One lead in the banquet of life. And so I bought these leads and they're disconnected. What should I do? Call the next one? I mean, move on. I mean, don't call me and whine. This is not the crying towel department. Susan Dampier, remember that one. This is not the crying towel department. Tracy, remember that one. David Silverman, that one's old school. I have a whole list of old school closing terms and techniques that I seldom bring out. At some seminar, I promise I'll bring out my closing terms and techniques and one-liners from back in the day. My name is Jeffery Combs. I am the president and founder. Jeff is the splitter. I forgot. David Silverman used to say that to me. He goes, Jeff will split you open. That was one of them. So good to see you, everyone. Ron Ziegler's on today's Facebook Live. Prayers and hugs to Ron. Ron's going through some challenging times with dialysis. Pembroke Pines, Florida. Ron, love you, my brother. Ron's been following me for 11 years. David Silverman, so good to see you. David was my client in 2002. Good to see everyone. I'll be back here tonight, Facebook Live. You can tell my wild hair brought out the best in me today. Thank you, Heather Vajan, for noticing that. I noticed that myself. I go, oh my God, my hair is wild today. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Love you, love you, love you. See you tonight. Bye, Cassie. Bye, Tracy. Have a good afternoon.